The snow fell in thick, silent curtains that Christmas night, blanketing the world in white while most families gathered around warm fires and twinkling trees. But in a weathered duplex on the forgotten edge of town, Sarah Mitchell sat in darkness, her 2 children huddled close on either side of her on the worn couch. The electricity had been cut off 3 days ago. The heat followed yesterday. And tonight, on Christmas Eve, she had finally run out of ways to pretend everything would be okay. Her daughter Emma, only 7 years old, had stopped asking when Daddy was coming home. Her son Jake, at 9, had grown quiet in ways that frightened Sarah more than his tears ever could. They knew. Children always know when the adults in their lives are drowning. And Sarah was drowning, pulled under by grief, bills, and the crushing weight of raising 2 kids alone after her husband Michael had died in a training accident 8 months ago. No combat zone. No heroic last stand. Just a routine jump that went wrong, and suddenly she was a widow at 32, with a life insurance payout that vanished faster than she could have imagined, into medical bills Michael's death had somehow still generated, into the funeral costs, into the hole of trying to stay afloat when the world seemed determined to pull her down. She had sold almost everything. The television had gone first, then Michael's tools, then her wedding ring, slipped off her finger in a pawnshop that smelled like desperation and broken promises. But it was never enough. Tonight, Christmas Eve, they sat in the dark and the cold, and Sarah felt like the worst mother in the world because she couldn't even give her children a warm room, let alone presents under a tree they didn't have. The knock at the door made all 3 of them jump. Sarah's heart hammered as she rose, instinctively moving her children behind her. It was nearly 10 o'clock. No one knocked this late with good news. Through the frosted window, she could make out a large silhouette, a man, broad-shouldered and imposing. Her hand trembled as she cracked the door open, leaving the chain lock engaged. Sarah Mitchell. The voice was deep, measured, the kind of voice accustomed to being obeyed. Who's asking? Her voice came out stronger than she felt. My name is Marcus Webb. I served with your husband. I just found out about Mike, and He paused, and she could see him better now in the porch light from the neighbor's house. He was maybe 40, with close-cropped dark hair going silver at the temples, a scar running along his jawline, and eyes that had seen things most people only watched in movies. Ma'am, I know this is strange, but I need to talk to you. Please. Something in his voice, a crack in that military composure, made her undo the chain. Michael had talked about his SEAL teammates like they were brothers. Maybe this was one of them. Marcus Webb stepped inside, and his trained eyes swept the dark, cold room in seconds. Sarah watched his jaw tighten as he took in the huddled children, the bare walls where pictures had once hung, the emptiness that spoke louder than words. When he looked back at her, she saw something that made her throat constrict, not pity, but recognition, as if he understood in a way that most people never could. How long have you been without heat? He asked quietly. Sarah lifted her chin. We're managing. How long? The military command in his voice broke something in her, or maybe she was just too tired to keep up the walls. Yesterday. The electricity went 3 days ago. I have some savings, but not until after the holidays. I just need to make it until. Get your kids' coats, Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Whatever you need for tonight. You're coming with me. I'm sorry, what? I don't even know you. He pulled out his phone, fingers moving quickly, and turned the screen toward her. It was a photo of Michael, younger, grinning in desert fatigues, his arms slung around the shoulders of the man now standing in her living room. They looked like brothers. They looked happy. Mike saved my life in Kandahar, Marcus said, his voice rougher now. Took a bullet meant for me. Did he ever tell you that? Sarah shook her head, tears burning her eyes. Michael never talked about his deployments. I've been overseas for the past year on contract work. Heard about Mike 2 days ago when I got stateside. Took me this long to track you down. He looked at her children, then back at her. I owe him everything. And I'm not leaving you here like this. Not tonight. Not ever. I can't just. We're not a charity case. No, you're not. You're the family of my brother. And right now, you're coming with me. We can argue about everything else later, but your kids need to be warm, and they need food, and it's Christmas. His voice softened. Please, Sarah, let me do this. For Mike. Emma's small voice cut through the tension. Mommy, I'm so cold. That was what broke her. Sarah nodded, unable to speak, and moved to gather their few belongings while Marcus knelt down to eye level with her children. "Hey guys," he said, his voice transforming into something gentle. "My name is Marcus. Your dad and I used to work together. He was the best man I ever knew. And he'd want me to make sure you all had a good Christmas. Is that okay?" Jake studied him with old eyes and a young face. "Are you a seal like my dad was?" "I was. Still am, in my heart." "Did you know him good?" "Better than good. He was my best friend." Something in Jake's face cracked open, and suddenly he was crying, really crying for the first time since the funeral, and Marcus pulled him into a hug without hesitation, this battle-hardened warrior cradling a broken boy against his chest while Emma joined them, and Sarah stood watching, clutching their clothes and weeping silently because sometimes strangers show up exactly when you need them most. Marcus's truck was warm, the heat blasting, and the kids fell asleep almost immediately in the back seat. He drove through empty Christmas Eve streets to a modest house in a better neighborhood, with lights still glowing in the windows and a wreath on the door. "My sister's place," he explained. "She's expecting us." The door flew open before they reached it, and a woman with Marcus's same dark eyes but a warmer smile ushered them inside to heat and light and the smell of cookies baking. The house was full. Marcus's sister Diane, her husband Tom, their 3 kids, and Marcus's mother, a tiny woman with steel in her spine who took one look at Sarah and pulled her into a fierce hug. "We're so glad you're here," she whispered. That night blurred into a watercolor of unexpected kindness. The kids were fed and bathed and dressed in warm pajamas. A room was prepared with actual beds and clean sheets. And under a massive Christmas tree that seemed to touch the ceiling, presents had appeared, wrapped in hasty newspaper and ribbon, because Marcus had apparently stopped at a 24-hour store on the way and bought everything he could think of. Sarah sat on the couch next to Marcus while the house settled into sleep around them, both holding mugs of coffee, and finally asked the question burning in her chest. "Why? Why would you do all this for people you don't even know?" Marcus stared into his coffee for a long moment. 3 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. We didn't have kids, but we wanted them. After she died, I threw myself into work, into anything that would let me forget. I was overseas when Mike died, and I missed the funeral. Missed the chance to be there for him, for you." He looked at her, and his eyes were bright. "Your husband saved my life so I could have more time in this world. The least I can do is make sure his family gets the life he wanted for them. I don't know how to repay this." "You don't. You just let me help. There's a job opening at the security firm where I work. It's administrative, but it pays well. We'll get your utilities back on. Get you stable. And these kids are going to know their father was a hero, and that the family he fought for is going to be okay." He smiled, and it transformed his hard face. "That's what Mike would have wanted. That's what brothers do." Sarah started crying again, but this time they were different tears. Tears of relief, of hope, of the understanding that even in the darkest moments, light can find its way in through unexpected doors. On Christmas morning, Emma and Jake woke to presents and laughter and a house full of people who treated them like they'd always belonged. And Sarah watched her children smile, really smile, for the first time in 8 months, and felt something shift in her chest, a letting go of the belief that she had to carry everything alone. Marcus caught her eye across the chaos of wrapping paper and excited shouts, and nodded once. A promise. A covenant between brothers that transcended death. Sometimes angels come in unexpected forms. Sometimes they're former Navy SEALs who track down widows in the darkness and refuse to let them drown. Sometimes they're families who open their homes without question to strangers who aren't really strangers at all. And sometimes, on Christmas night, when all seems lost, someone knocks on your door and says the words that change everything, "Come with me."